We're at the Carriage Hills subdivision in Annapolis, Maryland, and we're at the head of a small watershed that drains into the Chesapeake Bay. It's just a mile downstream. It has had a lot of problems with stormwater issues in the past. Keith, what have some of those issues been for this particular site?
Well, this was a 30-foot deep eroded gully transporting sediment downstream about a mile into an active community marina. Currently we face implementation of TMDLs here, so that's a large source of sediment pollution, and bound to that sediment is phosphorus. And so we've determined that this is the most effective way to meet those TMDL goals.
So, and not a unique situation here by any means, really a common thing where you have eroding head cuts due to stormwater. Erik, what are some of the funding mechanisms that made this project work in this particular setting?
So the Severn Riverkeeper program recognized the sediment issues in terms of Clements Creek and had the foresight to develop a set of shovel-ready plans, essentially, with the permits. And when the federal stimulus money came available, they were able to apply through the Maryland Department of the Environment to get about $500,000 to actually build this project.
So this kind of was in a place where kind of traditional funding mechanisms might not have worked because we're outside of the stormwater area and upstream of where we have perennial flows and such. So
and also the scale. There aren't many grant sources that have that much money available for these kinds of things.
So Joe, you were involved in the design for this. You want to say a little bit about what's unique in this and how this worked?
Sure. This is a very steep reach. This is about a 20% stream slope. And so what we had to do was fill that ditch that Keith was referring to with this mix of sand and wood chips to support this regenerative soil, and then construct a series of weirs and pools. And as you look up here, you'll see these 5-foot drop structures. That's to be able to get this system down, almost 47 foot over 800 foot of length. And what this really does is deliver clean, cool water, and at larger flows, at those infrequent high flows, like the 100-year discharge, which the site is designed for, to provide safe, non-erosive conveyance down to the receiving stream.
So, and we can't see it here, but there's sand underneath these rocks, and so that helps contribute to the base flow increases that you've seen downstream. So we could get the benefit of not just the storm flow, reducing the amount of storm flow, but also increasing the base flow. So it's kind of a win-win situation overall. And then we get this kind of a additional habitat that's gained up in these headwater areas that hadn't existed previously for things such as frogs and insects, and then also native vegetation. And your footprint's small too. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, the projects are designed, the system is designed to work right down the throat of the eroded channel, fill with sand, put wood chips over the surface of that, blade it out. That becomes the construction haul road. So the riparian zone is unaffected. The pools occupy the construction space, the pools and riffle grade control structures, so there's a very little evidence of construction when we pull out of these projects.
And this one's about a year old, so we're right at the beginning of the, as the vegetation's growing in.
And if I can just add to that, there's a lot of discussion about increasing stream flows. We're talking about habitat here. What sets this apart from the discussions about the lengthening of perennial streams now is this is not being down cut to expose to groundwater. We're actually picking that water up at a new higher surface elevation to bring that perennial stream flow back.
So not just the longitudinal, but also we're getting this kind of lateral connection back with the water table.
Raising the groundwater tables, rehydrating the historic wetted soils here, and that's then released as base flow back into the stream, for the rest of the entirety of the stream system here.
And I'd just like to point out, as long as we're still rolling here, is the applicability of this to a lot of other streams. We know agricultural drainage ditches work to lower the groundwater in the adjacent watershed. Every stream is working that way. Every incised channel is lowering the groundwater, which accelerates soil remineralization and nutrients, releasing more nitrogen and more phosphorus to the water column, stimulating more non-native invasive plants to come in and do well. And this approach reverses those trends. So we're all about trying to, turn back the clock on the impacts of urbanization to surface waters.
And a common thing in urban areas, right?
Absolutely.
Wherever we go across the country, we see down cutting and incision and head cutting, gulling because of that extra stormwater.
Yeah, it's inevitable in a watershed that the impervious area changes from very little to 50, maybe even 80%. All that extra water does a lot of work on the channel, causing the channel to enlarge, and that has propagating negative effects, degradation. And by changing that, by eliminating the ability of that water to downcut and transport all that sediment, we really are doing a lot of restoration. And it, as you had pointed out, Faith, it has positive effects on the adjacent woodlands, the adjacent plant community, as well as in-channel resources.
Right in the channel, yeah.